You're a co-host.
Oh, there it goes.
Looks like you figured it out.
I
Yeah.
did. Well, yeah, there aren't that many options, but
Yeah, I think it has something to do with hitting that record button.
well, yeah, sometimes there aren't enough. There's not enough room on the bottom of the screen, and there's a little thing over on the corner that says "More" with three dots over it, and that's where it was today.
Oh, Lena, I wanted to ask you, are you Lena Sherbin? Cherbin?
No, I'm just Lena.
There.
Like Madonna.
Why, do you know someone by that name?
Yeah, she's
Ah,
a writer, in fact. Although,
oh, okay.
yeah.
No, I'm not much of a writer, so I'm in tech.
So, what brings you here tonight? How did you find?
This just showed up on my feed and I was like, okay, why not? I'd just love to hear some insight. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
What kind of feed are you talking about?
Oh, on my meetup feed, it just showed up. So I was like, okay, I'll just jump in and see what this is about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wonder how it got there.
I might have attended something else in the past. So sometimes Meetup does recommendations to other groups. So it could be either or.
Yeah, it's probably a meetup. Yep.
Meetup is fairly aggressive.
It is. And I noticed it's got a lot of algorithms behind it. So it's really interesting perspective. So
Yeah. Well,
We've lost Ryan here. Let's see. Oh, no.
all right. Well, we can go through the usual motions here. Let me introduce myself. I'm Richard Matiosi. I'm president of the San Francisco Bay chapter of STC. This is our monthly meeting, and I'm going to introduce the those of our leadership who are here in the order that they appear on my screen, which is probably different from the order on your screen, but that's life. Nikki Davis is our past president and secretary and chair of our committee to take care of merging all of our chapter facilities. I should say, for those who don't know, that we are what remains of four local chapters that have, over the last couple of years, merged into one. Okay, and let's see. Jasmine Hankey is our programs person, our vice president for programs. Actually, I could explain the the ins and outs of our leadership structure. It's not like we have bylaws, but we've acted the same way since, at least since I joined here, which was in 1992. So we have traditions anyway. Bruce Poropat is our raffle manager. He hands out the raffle tickets, and
It's been an easy gig for quite a while.
yeah, we haven't had much in the way of. Did we have a raffle at the? We did have a raffle at the in-person thing. Yeah,
that's right.
We had an in-person meeting in December, a little Christmas party, basically, in Pleasanton. And Patrick Lufkin is our VP for membership, and he's also a past president of the San Francisco chapter, which is one of the chapters that merged into this one. And he's a longtime member. He's chair of the Gordon Scholarship Committee, and he is, what else are you, Pat? You're everything.
I'm everything.
Oh, and we're coming to Lori. Lori Meyer is an unofficial part of our chapter leadership. She's not allowed to be in the chapter leadership because she's on the STC board of directors, and so can't show any favoritism to chapters, but she's also a longtime member of this chapter. So hi, Lori, you want to say something?
Well, I still try to keep in touch with all of the chapters that I belong to. I currently am a member of 15 STC chapters, so I try to make the rounds, even though I can't volunteer. I just want to keep in touch. On the board, this is my first of 2 terms, so I'll be serving a second term next year. I'm also chair of the SDC Community Affairs Committee, which tries to, work with chapters and special interest group, just do outreach to them, help them resolve things, help keep communication open between the communities and the SDC office. So there's not much I can do as far as like fixing things, like fixing issues with the website or anything, but I can certainly make sure that those issues are put in front of the SDC office. And we have some events at the summit conference, so anybody that's going, we're planning some social networking and information exchange functions. We're going to have a virtual event scheduled for some, I think it's June 8th. So everybody's welcome, and you'll be hearing more about that. So it's good to be here. This is, I joined East Bay in 2011. So it's been a good little time now. And,
Here we go. Here's Joe Deppy.
Hi, Joe.
Well, all right. While we're introducing people, there's Joe Devney. Well, he's connecting. I'll introduce him in a minute. Let me say about the CAC, which Lori is head of. That is one of STC's best ideas, and it replaced a thing we used to have a series of what we call director sponsors, which were advocates for local areas, and they made up the board of directors. There were 9 of them, and they made up the board of directors. And at a certain point, somebody discovered that was incompatible with the laws that we were incorporated under, the New York State laws for not-for-profits.
They changed states is what they did.
Yeah. Anyway, so shortly after that, Susan, what was her name? I forget now, who was the executive director, had the idea of forming this
Burton, I
committee.
think.
What's that?
Susan Burton?
Yeah. Anyway, she had the idea of forming this committee, and I was on the initial committee, actually, one of the first people back in I forget when it was, 2005, 6, somewhere in there. Anyway, it's done a lot of good work helping chapters, although it hasn't prevented the number from dwindling quite considerably. Anyway, to continue with introducing our leadership, here's Joe Devney, our past president and election manager, and I don't know what else Joe does. He does all sorts of things. He's been in the leadership of this chapter for a very long time. Yeah, he was a president for quite a while, and he was a treasurer for a while, and I don't remember.
Vice president for programs.
Programs. Oh, yes, that's right. He was an excellent programs manager. So, Jasmine, if you have questions, ask Joe. Joe knows.
Will do, definitely.
All right. So that's all of our leadership who are here, as far as I can tell, unless I missed something. And I heard a ding, but I don't see. Oh, that's Andrew. Well, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. Yeah, Andrew Davis is one of the recruiters of technical writers. He's been a recruiter of technical writers since the early 90s, but before that he was a president of the San Francisco chapter. And So we're always happy to see Andrew. So now we have Andrew and Denny here today. That's going to be good. We're going to hear about lots of jobs, right, guys?
Oh, my wish.
All right. Anyway, so that's our leadership. And do we have any announcements? Nikki, do you have any announcements? You're on mute, Nikki. You're still on mute.
Sorry about that. No, not at the moment, although I think we will have a speaker next month, but I think Jasmine is the one who could tell us about that.
Okay. All right. Jasmine, you want to tell us about next month's program?
Sure. We will be having Victoria Bortle. She is a documentation manager at the company I work for, Coupa Software, and she's going to host more of an open discussion. She's going to talk a bit about her journey and what building up the documentation program at our company has been like. And then hopefully we'll just move into more of that open discussion and share resources and different types of leadership styles, hoping to just kind of have more of a dynamic presentation and just learn from each other.
Well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
All right.
great.
Well, at this point, if we don't have any more announcements, normally what we do is we do elevator pitches. With just anybody who wants to talk for 30 seconds about anything at all. Now's a really good time to do it.
Yeah, does anybody want to introduce themselves? Yeah.
Well, I could. This is kind of half-hearted because I can't decide if I'm retired or not. I can't. Retirement and unemployability kind of look similar. But I'd really be interested in remote work and maybe just editing or content strategy stuff. And I still get a lot of calls from recruiters, and emails from recruiters, and they're mostly kind of off point, or they want a kind of advanced skill set that's right up my alley, but they want to pay like half rate. So it's funny times.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm really selling myself here,
Yeah.
But I'm very good at editing, and I'm very good at general content management and strategy stuff.
Bruce is a notorious minimalist.
Yes, fewer words the better.
Yes.
Short sentences, active voice.
He is more aggressive about it than he looks like. All right. Yeah, I recently ended my engagement with Pepper Data, and I updated my LinkedIn profile, and as a result, I've been getting this slew of stuff that's just. I mean, somebody had this great position for $30 an hour. Just the
Opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mostly just say thanks, but no thanks to those things. Anybody else?
I'm Nikki, and I retired from full-time work in mid-2019. And right now I'm working part-time as a consultant for a consulting firm from someone I knew back in the day at a very good job that I had for 18 and a half years. So anyway, I'm very, very lucky to have it. But yeah, I've encountered that business of $25 an hour. that kind of thing. So
Well, it's good money if you're just pushing hamburgers through a little window all day.
yeah. But no, not for technical writing. But anyway, so thank you. I pass.
Yeah.
Okay, I can step in here. Almost everybody here knows me. I'm Joe Devney, as Richard mentioned before. I've been a technical writer for a very long time. I have written a lot of material for technical people, like at the system administrator level, not too much for developers, and I don't write code. But I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of editing, and there seems to be a theme here that I'm getting job leads for way too little money. And I should mention I'm happy to work remote or work in an office in San Francisco or the inner East Bay.
Mm.
And I can give you lots more about my background if anyone cares.
Okay, anyone else?
This is Andrew. I hope you can hear me okay. I don't have any magic bullets. I've been watching the market and I'm hearing a lot of consulting rates being offered and a lot of resume harvesting going on. That is, companies say, please send your resume, and then silence. My interpretation of that is they don't have the funding and they don't have consensus on what they need. So they'll string you out and raise your hopes and then leave you wondering why you bothered. It's this strange time. People seem to be alternately fearful of the recession that might not be, or greedy about picking up all the wonderful talent that has been laid off from all these big name companies. Can't figure out which personality fits them day to day. But do not blame yourselves, please. And if you can, please be patient, because this impasse will resolve, and it will resolve to your benefit. Experience is still a good thing, even though there are some recruiters out there who will tell you otherwise, that they don't want to pay for all your experience. This is just classic return from the downturn, and the market is coming back up.
I see Rose Tomey has joined us, I think. Rose, we're in the middle of giving 30-second elevator pitches. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, wow. I just wrote one the other day. Can you give me a minute and I'll pull it up?
You're supposed to know them. So, I mean, on the elevator, you're not going to pull out your notes.
I know. I'm on the spot. And then my tech, I realize I need one that's a little bit better thought out as I go along this journey of employment and unemployment. Can you come back to me?
Okay, we'll come back to you when you're ready.
All right.
Anybody else? Oh, Danny.
I'll do my elevator pitch if we want to. I'm Denny Brown, run Expert Support Inc. Echoing what Andrew said, this downturn is like other downturns. The big guys lay off a bunch of people, then they turn around and hire some of them back on a contractor sort of basis. Expert Support's been in business since 1990, mainly doing technical writing. We place people in places like Google and Apple and Adobe, and then small companies. Joe worked for us for a while with a particular project. For us, things come and go depending on what the customer needs. Joe did a bunch of work, for example, for a company back east who got to the point that said, all right, you've now done way more than we need. So then they took the rest of the project offshore So things come and go, but we are pretty well positioned, especially in the very deep end of the technical spectrum. So developer docs is kind of our niche. But we do place other things now and then. We did an installation guide for an industrial coffee roaster. Done the installation guides for a roofing company installing
Solar panels.
So we've done some of those other things, but our main thing is deep inside developer to developer docs.
Was that coffee roaster thing entered in the Touchstone competition a few years back?
Yeah, maybe. Rebecca Firestone did it, and Rebecca was
Right.
I remember that. I was very impressed with that document.
yeah. Rebecca was with us for quite a few years, and the coffee roaster one was one of her projects.
Yeah. Yeah, we miss Rebecca. We haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah.
Yep. She got involved in a startup, and that takes people off planet for a while. So I'm off. Questions if you want to.
Anyone else?
Oh, Rose?
Yeah, good
Okay.
memory. It's hard to shake you. Yeah, I've got an elevator speech that I've been working on here. So I am saying that my name is Rose Tomey, and I'm a technical communicator with 20 plus years of experience who excels at transforming ambiguity into crisp, clear, and consistent documentation. I have also successfully worked with hundreds of subject matter experts throughout all levels of small to large organizations to define and develop processes that will improve their daily work experience. I'm known for being enjoyable to work with, thorough and detail-oriented, and committed to creating user-friendly content. Ta-da!
Okay, that's a start. By the way, I recently read this book. I don't know if
Smart brevity.
Brevity.
Yeah, cool.
and if you're writing elevator pitches, this is a good thing to read.
Well, I heard you want 30 seconds, so I don't know. Maybe I went on for 4 minutes, but it seemed like 30 seconds to me.
Well,
it was a long
say
elevator.
more. You can say all you want.
What's that?
We have a flexible watch, like Salvador Dali.
Yeah. Melting.
Melting time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rose, I still have your
Water bottle. You haven't put it
I
on eBay
apologize.
yet. I see
I
this.
owe
I'm
you
going
an
to get it.
apology for not getting back to you on the email.
I'm so
We'll-
thirsty. Yes.
We'll get it to you one of these days.
So parched. I'll have to get it back. Yes.
Mhm.
well, we made Dave thirsty. All right. Well, if no one else wants to give an elevator pitch, does anybody want to mention any jobs that they know about that are available? Don't all speak at once.
I have a question for the assembled multitude. Is there a pattern to the layoffs, or are companies just pleasing the shareholders by cutting their expenses?
I'm sorry, Andrew, your sound is a little hard to.
I apologize. Is there a pattern to the layoffs that you've heard about? Or is it just companies deciding to cater to the shareholders and trimming expenses?
I think somebody, maybe it was Denny, said earlier before you got on that a lot of the big companies, the big tech companies, were laying people off because they basically overhired.
Yeah, and
During
then
the
there's the
pandemic.
and then there's the follow the leader aspect. As soon as one does it, then the other guys think that it's okay to do it. Then, so I think there's a lot of follow the leader, and it makes the
Copycats.
shareholders make Wall Street happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there was some overhiring. I think that's true. I think people were stockpiling talent, figuring that they better get them while they could, and then as projects slow down or projects go away, and a lot of the cuts that we've seen at Expert Support are they're not scalpel cuts. They're they're using just a big hammer and getting rid of a bunch of people just to do the numbers. So we're seeing some good people landing in our lap, which is a good thing. Looking for places to land. But we have not yet seen the rebound effect where after letting people go, they decide they've still got to get some work done. So now let's bring in temporary help to get the work done that we need to get done. We expect to see that in the next, some amount. It's hard to tell exactly when the worm turns, but we're starting to see a little bit of that. After the Google layoffs, for example, we have a very interesting Google potential coming in. Again, very deep end in the pool. It's a highly technical developer one, but so we'll see.
On that scalpel versus hammer issue, I got laid off in the early 2000s from an online real estate company, and I was in the web development team, and they were laying off about a quarter to a third of the company all at once. And I said, I don't take this personally. I know how this stuff works, and it's tough being a startup and stuff, but you have a text-based product, and I'm the only writer you have. So, and they said, well, you're absolutely right, but what we did was sort salaries by salary, then go down with a yellow marker, and that's how we decided who to lay off.
Oh God.
So it really was a hammer. It was really like nothing to do with it wasn't needs analysis at all. It was just all about how much money to cut. It's weird.
Yeah, people in upper management are often capable of making some really dumb mistakes, as we can see in the Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think they do layoffs it makes it look like something's getting done.
It's to make their sales figures look good. I remember, back when I was working for a company that briefly went public, our fiscal year ended on March 31st. On March 29th, they laid off a bunch of people, and they were using a metric called earnings per employee. So they did that not based on a prorated of how many employees they had, like on the 28th, but rather on the number of employees that they had after they laid off all those people. That was sort of a management fad at the time. I think this was the mid 1980s. Was called earnings per employee. So they're using sometimes faddish metrics, and Bruce, that sounds like they were using some kind of fad metric on you too.
Well, it was just, we need to reduce payroll by X amount. And then the rest was just math. There was no needs analysis at all. And I really did think startups tend to either have way too many people or way too few people. And they were definitely in the way too many people. So it didn't surprise me they were laying off. And they had gone through, this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, the business model was not about customers. It was about how much venture capital you could raise. That was the business, was raising venture capital. And they were going for their third or fourth round of venture capital, I forget, but it was like 2 or 3 rounds too many. And the venture capital people, this was the dot-com bubble was starting to burst, and the venture capital people were starting to say, we just realized we don't know what you do. And so it was a strange time, but I was so struck by the way they made the decision. It was just purely like adding up numbers, nothing about needs analysis or roles or structure or goals.
Sounds like the venture capitalists weren't very much on the ball at that time.
You know, the venture capital messes up a lot of corporate decisions. This was the same company. They had this really interesting thing. It was like it was Zip Realty. And the idea was kind of like using TurboTax, but to buy and sell property. And you could do it all in this kind of dialogue on the screen where you'd fill stuff out and it would take care of it for you, and it would cost way less than going through agents. And it was a great idea. But if they had I said at some point, because they had a whole, like, I don't know, 15 or 20 people who were just looking at all the different ways real estate is done in each state. It's done differently. So they had to translate all that. And I said, well, why don't you just do California? Why don't you just do the Bay Area until you own the Bay Area, and then expand to the rest of the state? And then once you have the California, then expand to the next state. They said that was the plan. And the venture capitalists said, no, it's World Wide Web. You have to do everything at once. And so they made this really stupid decision just to appease that they knew was dumb. They knew it was not what they wanted to do, and they did it just to make the venture capitalists happy. And they were laying off all of the company just to make the venture capitalists not happy. It was just venture capital has a dark side.
Yes. Nikki, your story.
Dark side.
Nikki?
Yeah, that reminds me of something. I don't know.
I was going to respond to what you said.
Yeah.
Your story sounds less like a management fad and more like an accounting trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Measuring revenue per employee makes sense, but the way they did it was dishonest, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. There was not just the management.
You know, say, oh, by the way, here's the formula we use to calculate it. You know, not prorated over the previous quarter, but yeah, amen. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, that company also made an appearance in Dilbert at one point.
That's never a good sign.
They're in good company.
There was a Dilbert cartoon that talked about, it says, we're going to give you, I don't know, a bonus of such and such for every bug you find and fix. Okay, these are the same programmers that are writing the software and creating the bugs.
Yeah, you definitely have a mixed incentive there, all right. Jasmine, do you want to lead things at all for a while? Make sure we hit all the points that you had in mind?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I am happy to. Again, we don't have to hit everything, but mainly just looking to share experience. Like we said, I know we've touched on and off about specific experiences. I guess, being newer in my career, this is my first time moving through this, so lots of questions for transparency. And selfishly, my company has also been acquired during this time by a venture capital firm, so that's delightful. So insights there are welcome. So I guess to kick us off I know some folks have spoken, but is anyone willing to share any other experiences you've seen just throughout the breadth of your career? I know we've talked about phases, there have been different waves. Anything you guys would like to contribute before I move us into more specificity?
What are you asking for, Jasmine? You asking for
We've just starting
historical
more,
patterns?
yeah, just any patterns. Just I know we've talked a few times about when it happened. I know Nikki, you talked right about the fiscal year. I guess just patterns, anything to watch for. Were there signals at your organization? I know I'm seeing some flags at mine that I'm not a fan of.
I'm trying to
Well,
think.
I will share one bit of information I remember from my organizational behavior class in college, and the office grapevine for rumors, that's right about 2/3 of the time. So listen to what people are saying.
2/3 of the time. That's not bad.
Exactly.
And just because they say there won't be a layoff doesn't mean there won't be a layoff.
Like, if they go out of their way to say there's not going to be a layoff, there's probably going to be a layoff.
Yeah, when my company merged with another one, he said, "Don't worry, everybody, because there won't be any layoffs as a result of this merger." And then fast forward 6 to 9 months.
There won't be layoffs. You're just fired.
Whatever you want to call them, you know.
Yeah. They meant, well, there won't be any layoffs on day one, but maybe 6 months down the road. Oh, dear. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they mean it at the time, but I just have to take everybody with a grain of salt.
I count on that. The one time I was employed as a job, the company was having problems, and I just remember this one month. We'd have employee meetings in the lobby of this building. It'd be like 60 people in this office. Most of the developers are there. Some of them were in China, and the CEO and the main financial guy were there, and they were saying, things are going to be okay, everything's fine. Next month we get together, there's 30 people in the meeting instead of 60, and they're still going, we've had to make some cuts, but everything's fine. And you just go, how am I supposed to trust you at that point? So it's people say sometimes the CEO will say what they need to say in order to make people not freak out. So just for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, there's an old story. CEOs, when they're anticipating this sort of thing, one of the rules is you can't fire the gardener. So if the CEO fires his gardener, that sends out a signal that things are coming, because the CEO himself is paying attention to his own finances. So so one of the issues that, I mean, the real story behind that is the top end management has to be very discreet about their conversations. So one of the signals for Jasmine, one of the signals to look for is an increase in private conversations. People walking around the building, especially senior management, having conversations outside of their normal habitats. So.
If you can see them, if they're in real world life.
Yeah, right, exactly. This is the old days when people did walk around buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. The kind of the visibility. One of the things that tipped us off is there was chatter around mid-November in the financial journals, and CEOs like, oh, no, don't worry about it. And then our last all hands before it was announced was a company retrospective about the history of the company and how far we've come. And we're like, oh, that's less than ideal. And then that Monday, yep, it was announced. So, okay, that's interesting. So if you hear the chatter, I guess, what is the moves that you start making besides the obvious ones of dusting off materials? Like, what is your thought process when you start to see some of those signals?
Panic.
once the panic portion comes down.
You definitely want to update the resume, and you want to update your references. You talk to the people who are around that you work well with, and you say, if the axe falls, may I use you as a reference? And I'd be happy to be a reference for you. By the way, here's what I do, just so you sound more credible. And you get your portfolio together. And sometimes you need to ask management or people in different departments for permission to extract content and show it outside the company. And when you ask those questions in person, you're much more likely to get a yes. And I wouldn't advocate taking documents lock, stock, and barrel, but you can extract from them 3 or 4 pages here, 3 or 4 pages there, demonstrations of what you've done recently that aren't functionally useful to someone else, but are current and what you can discuss. And then you talk to your LinkedIn network. Make sure that they're aware. There's easy ways to do that these days. Didn't used to be, but there are now. So freshen the LinkedIn network, as Richard pointed out, when you update it, the world hears and pays attention. And just do that over and over, and participate in group chats. I mean, I don't know that it's been mentioned in this context because it's kind of a rival organization, but Write the Docs is a phenomenal place to get noticed.
Don't really look at them as rivals. No, they're just
Okay.
they're happy. A lot of us go to both meetings.
I
Anyway,
actually haven't run across that yet. Does anyone care to give a quick blurb over Write the Docs and the benefits?
Well, they probably could do that themselves, but
Yeah.
basically, Write the Docs is more focused on developers than not traditional tech writers.
Okay.
They have
A good way to check them out is to just join their Slack channel and see what's going on.
Yeah, they have a
it's
Slack.
very active.
Andrew, did you say something? I'm sorry.
I said their Slack channel is very active, and people there are very, very quick to participate and guide and be generous with insights and introductions. So it is a very useful feature. It's to developer documentation what STC used to be to all tech writers. And STC has shrunk to the point where it can be helpful in certain contexts. Write the Docs as a specialty, and it's unrivaled if that's your area.
Great. Well, thank you. I had not run across them yet, so that's a wonderful resource. So kind of with the preparation in mind, starting to, dust off materials, farm your network. The adage I've always heard, maybe it's not as accurate now, that it's much easier to find a job when you have a job. How do you market yourself post-layoff and communicate that when you're interviewing and navigate kind of that experience?
I'll say one thing is I'd say just don't make a big deal out of it. Just like as little as possible. There was a mass layoff in November and I'm looking for a new opportunity. Like I see some of these people apologizing and just like, that's me, just the facts.
It's probably not a good idea to badmouth your previous employers, even if they, fired you.
Well, there's something too. I think if you're caught in a mass layoff, there's not much of a stigma involved with that, because it's clear, it wasn't just, they just let you go. They let, it's probably not because of your bad performance or anything. Yeah.
one thing that I've seen happen is people will post that they've been laid off on LinkedIn and that they're looking, and recruiters just jump into their reply threads saying, "Hey, send me your resume. I've got something." That happens. It's really kind of interesting how much that happens on LinkedIn, particularly now, because the layoffs, people are sympathetic towards the layoffees and not so much towards the layoffers. So they're very, very happy to help, as much as they can.
That makes sense. And for anyone who's interviewed after a layoff, does it even come up if you don't bring it up?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay.
No one's going to say until you're a finalist, they're not going to say, tell us why you were laid off. And by that point, my recommendation is invent a contender. You don't have to have another offer, but if you're talking to other companies and you're talking about specific roles, that creates urgency in the company that's getting around to getting interested. And they get more decisive when they think they're going to lose.
Okay. Thank you.
It's also a very useful tactic when you start negotiating prices. Sorry, I'm talking to this other company and they're talking about this kind of range. That's where I need to price myself. And oh, darn, okay, well, that's 40K more than we wanted to spend, but I see now that you're worth it. Let's keep talking.
And there doesn't even have to be another company.
No.
Yeah.
A straw company.
Well, you could say, yeah, there is another company that is offering that, but I don't know. I also say, like,
company somewhere offering that to somebody.
Exactly, right? Or you could say, I've been doing market research and I've talked to a few colleagues and I've found that
But you want to show that you've made progress. You're speaking to, and then name a company, name a role. If you can't do that, then don't. But don't hide that fact. It builds your credibility.
It does help. Does it help to have to know the salary range? I mean, this may be a very dumb elementary question, but the STC does have a salary database that gives salary ranges for different, and is that useful to have that knowledge?
There's actually a new law that's coming in, I think started January 1st, where employers are required now to post salary ranges for job postings when they post them. Now we know about it because when we put out our job, our notices, we are often in the early stages of talking to a customer, and we don't know what they need or how much they're willing to pay for that. And so our business model is our writers make a percentage of what we're billing customers. And, so we don't know, but so we have to put up a range that will cover, what our expectations are. We recently saw a posting for something similar at Apple, where the range was something like $80 an hour to $250 an hour. So,
somebody posted that.
Yeah, so so companies are now supposed to provide a range, but it can, I mean, that range was not very useful. But we're in the same situation. We will often have to have a relatively wide range, depending on what we think we're going to get from landing the customer deal. But we're transparent with our people about what we're doing and why we're doing it and whether it's going to work. And in the answer, now the other aspect, though, to I think bring up is there are bad actors, in the recruiting world,
Mm.
who do bait and switch. I've heard stories of people bringing in on a contractor basis, and on the day that on the start date, you're signing a piece of paper that has a different rate than what you agreed to.
Mm.
And so these are stories that I've heard from applicants about bad actors in the arena. So be careful. I think that's the other bit. So, do people have a long-standing history? That some of the resume mills have that kind of problem. So, Andrew, have you seen that any of that?
This is a business where the bar keeps getting lower.
Yeah.
It's not hard to stand out and be ethical, or comparatively ethical in it. Yeah, don't ever let your guard down with a recruiter.
Right.
They're professional salespeople. They don't know what you do. They don't care. And if they don't get you across the finish line, they don't get paid. So have leverage.
A word to the wise. Mm-hmm.
Another thing I've found irritating, I've had a couple situations where a recruiter will be so invested in following up with me, and then if the job doesn't come through, they just go silent and they won't get back to me. And it's just really rude, because they've also burned the bridge with me. I've had somebody do that with me, and then he calls me back 3 months later, and I just don't want to talk to him anymore, because he didn't even have the courtesy to tell me what happened. It just didn't happen, but I don't know any details.
Yeah. Yeah, and on our side of the fence on that, we often have conversations with people. We like them. We're hoping to find a spot for them, and then it can go months before we find a fit. And we try to communicate that's what's going on, but I wish we were doing a better job of that.
Yeah, I find the same. I'll get back to you quickly with an answer, and then it's 2 months, and you try not to get angry with them. And you want to keep hope alive, but you don't want to mislead. It's a fine line.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I've also had situations where they said they hired internally, or you didn't have this particular skill. And I'm like, well, what skill was it?
Yeah.
So a decision has been made, but they won't elaborate. They
Right.
just lied.
So yeah, I mean, we go through 2 doors into the big companies at Expert Support. One door is project work, which is the one we prefer, where we take responsibility for a project. We staff it in a way that we think we can get the work done. Often for us, it's a 1-person project, but we staff it and then support that person as they're executing. The second door is contingent staffing, in which case we're competing with the giant staffing firms, Adecco and Volt, and others like that. And when we're going through that door, we don't have access to the hiring manager. Typically, we're typically working through some filter where there's a job description, maybe. And for writers, the job description is often written by a person who's not a writer and doesn't know what writers do. So we often, have a very weak view of, what the job really is, or what's necessary, so we have to read between the lines in a lot of cases. And then the filters are often filtering on keywords. The person's looking at, does this person have, Python and something else? And if it's not on your resume, then it doesn't get through that screen. And so we hate that door. I mean, that's the simple version is we're being buffered by people who don't know what the hiring manager really needs. And so it's we still do it, because, if that's what it takes to get into one of the big companies, we do it, but we really prefer the project-based entree.
Right. That's the thing I always looked for when I was applying. For God's sake, don't go through HR because they don't know anything. Try to get to the hiring manager. And the question I always want to know is, this open position is a solution. What problem are you trying to solve? Okay. And that's because if I'm not a good fit, if I can't solve that problem, that's what I need. That's what they need to articulate. And so it sounds like you guys, part of what you guys do, Denny, is to just ask that question. Okay, why did you put this advertisement up? What's the need behind this? Did I get that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when we can talk to the people that really have the problem, we can get to those issues. And when we're dealing with 2 levels of indirection, it becomes much more difficult.
Mm-hmm. That's how you get job offers for $25 an hour.
Yeah.
Well, the $25 offers, that's part of, and this astounds me since I've been in technical writing. How many times you run into people that you're reporting to somebody in a company who the reason you're reporting to them is that nobody else wanted to take on some technical writer. So they give the low person on the totem pole who often really doesn't know what a technical writer does. And that when I first ran into that, I thought I was kind of caught off guard because it's not complicated. I mean, it's writing, it's technical, it's but so the whole they didn't know anything about what processes a technical writer might use, what a technical writer can and can't do for them. Yeah, it's just frustrating.
I will share a quick anecdote following up on that. I used to work for a big company based in Europe, and there was a corporate reorganization, and I had to start working with the technical writers in England. And as I worked with them, I realized that they were hired to be technical writers because they understood Microsoft Word very well. I have another question about the terminology that I come across. A recruiter will say our client has an urgent need for such and such. I wonder what it means to them, because I ask, how urgent is it? How are they paying above market rate to get somebody to start right away? Or how much are they losing every day that somebody's not filling that? And the recruiters never answer that. To them, urgent seems to mean I have to hurry up and get back to them. Do I have the wrong view here?
No,
right view.
You're right.
It's in the context that Denny outlined, where you were dealing with the mega agencies.
Mm-hmm.
The job description is shared in the conference call. Kind of, there's nominal opportunity for questions to be asked and not answered, and then everyone is racing to the keyword filter and calling you first. And if they get to you first and you give them permission to introduce you, then they have the right to represent and they can potentially profit from you. It is a race, and it is a race to the bottom. It's a mess because it's really doing the large companies a disservice to their reputation. You have to believe that they're actually saving some money somewhere along the way. but most of these agencies keep the difference between the bill rate that's been established and what they can get you to work for.
Mm.
And so it's not like, oh, we're going to take a percentage of what you earn. It's we're going to take what the client's offering, and we're going to try to get you to take less, much less. By contrast with the way Denny secures his business, what I find is that 90+% of the work that comes to me comes by referral from other technical writers or people who worked with me or with people I know. And I do get to speak to the CTOs, I get to speak to CEOs and chief engineers, and I get to talk about their problems. And the best part of the equation is I get to tell them what's not reasonable in their requests and what's conflicting in their job description, and ask them to prioritize. And on that basis, I can give them estimated costs, and I can fill the opportunity sometimes in an afternoon. It's when you have a committee that is nominally responsible for hiring and is typically trying to save their what's by not looking bad or giving a thumbs up to somebody who can't do the work. That's what makes hiring decisions take too long, and it's what makes people anxious and delegate to a know-nothing responsibility of supervising the tech writer. Sorry if I have too many opinions.
No, please.
Those sound like observations rather than opinions. In other words, those are use cases that you've actually seen happen, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So Jasmine, do you have any other questions? You'll get more specific.
I know, leading us through the triangle. I guess, I've been hearing just a lot of great advice, so thank you so far for all of this. Really helpful. I think at the beginning of our casual conversation before we started, there was some talk about industry trends or those sorts of things. Have you seen any throughout the years? I mean, I'm looking at tech right now, obviously, but anything to note, or industries that are perhaps more stable, or is it just, you never know?
Well, there are a lot of trends actually that are happening now. There's a huge movement toward AI, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know exactly what that means for us, but it certainly is a big thing. Another thing is stuff moving into the cloud and the things like Kubernetes and so forth, AWS. All of these things are that nobody ever heard of 10 years ago. But the AI stuff, I was wondering, Denny, you've been in expert systems going back to a very long time ago. What do you think of what's happening there now?
Yeah, Chat GPT is very impressive, and I think we'll if you haven't seen any of it, it's something to take a look at. It's very impressive. So quick hands. How many people know even what I'm talking about? Chat GPT.
Oh yes.
Good.
Heard of it.
Yeah. It's impressive. I think it will it will make its way into commercial products relatively quickly. For example, Bing is working with Microsoft is working with OpenAI to use some of the Chat GPT version 4 as part of the search engine, so that you can ask a question and in this, instead of simply giving you a bunch of links to go look at, it can give you a summary of an answer to your question.
Whoa.
Which is what that's what it does now. You can get into Chat GPT and ask questions, and it'll give you answers, and you can have a conversation that hones the problem down a bit if it gave you something you didn't like. Now the whole story here is it's all based on existing information that was existing prior to 2021 on the internet that it happened to be trained on. So if you hit something that it knows about, it does a very good job. We asked it, for example, recently, we asked what makes for good API documentation, and it made a very coherent and nice summary of what makes for good API documentation. And we think that it probably read the blog post that we wrote 4 or 5 years ago on what makes good API documentation. But it did a nice summary. I mean, it really did a good job.
I've just been recently fiddling with it, and one of the things I asked it was, how do you remove the heating and air conditioning panel from the dashboard of a Toyota Matrix, which is something I have to do because I have a problem to fix. And it gave a very well written answer that I must say was not right, but it was very well written. And it was a good generic, it kind of was like, hey, you're going to have to take some screws out and pry the panel off, is basically was its answer. There are no screws, but it was not far off.
That's what I'm hearing, is that it produces results that are smooth and coherent in a sense. I mean, you just read them and they they read it at a better quality than a lot of college essays.
Yeah, I would have been more impressed if
it's a little bit clunky, but not quite as clunky as college students actually write.
I would have been slightly more impressed if it had just said, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm hearing is that, I mean, there were like some political guys that tested it. I forget whether it was Paul Kruger or not, but it was somebody, and tested it, and they got back these essays with, footnotes and all kinds of stuff, except that they quoted people and as representing opinions that were the opposite of the opinion they actually held, and other kinds of stuff. And it was true, they'd found a sentence someplace that this guy had said something about it, but they'd slotted a quote from him into the essay, but in fact it was the opposite of the position that he in fact held. The thing was why does this product keep lying? But it lied very smoothly and it was very sure of itself.
Sounds like it's better at editing than it is at fact checking.
Yeah.
With regard to fact checking, it's making use of what was on the internet that it was trained on, and that may have been trained on poor information. So when it gets the things wrong, like Bruce suggested, it's because the Toyota documentation wasn't right in the first place, or they got to the wrong one, or who knows. But yes, at this point, fact checking is important. Human editing is important. For example, Google now has policies about auto-generated content. It says that the auto-generated content should be of a high quality and good user experience. The question is, how do you get that? And if you just take the straight thing out of ChatGPT, you probably don't get either of those. But if you take that as the first pass and edit it and have a human, you can make a lot of in certain areas, you can make a lot of progress much faster using ChatGPT than doing things by hand. So
I have not used
one is research. If you're researching some, you want to know something new about TensorFlow, so you can ask what about TensorFlow, and it'll give you a summary, and you can ask it further questions about what it means by this or that, and you can get an intro to a new arena relatively quickly. I think it's something that I'm planning to use with my writers. Is if you're jumped into a new area where you don't understand the domain very well yet, you don't yet talk the language, using something like ChatGPT to get the quick summary and pointers to other things, and just get into the vocabulary so that you can have an intelligent conversation with your SME. I think ChatGPT will have some traction there. So anyway, interesting question, Richard. And,
this is really fascinating. Unfortunately, I have to go because I have a band practice, but thank you, everybody. This was really cool.
Bruce, yes,
Hi,
thanks.
Bruce. Thanks for coming.
See you all soon.
See you.
Yes, take care.
On the AI thing, I actually have some skepticism, and it's good to hear you point out sort of the weak points of it, because it looks like it's something of a fad right now. The latest thing, and this is going to fix everything, and it's going to take some time for the dust to settle. From what you're saying, the dust is already starting to settle, that you can use it to acquire domain knowledge.
Yeah, there are some very interesting statistics. I'm doing this from memory now, and I'm not very good with numbers. But ChatGPT went to 100 million users in like 3 months, and I think TikTok was the previous winner, and they did it in 9 months or some number like that, and Instagram was 2.5 years. Now, some of that is, these are free accounts, and as they were free accounts in the other ones. And ChatGPT now is rate limited on whether it's up or not, because there's too many users, and they're still scaling up the fundamentals.
Oh,
And they're talking now about a beta for a paid one to get better response times, and et cetera, et cetera. So it is early. It is
yeah.
But Microsoft just invested a whole pile of money in OpenAI, partly to make the jump into using it for search engine.
To compete with Google, essentially.
And without giving away any things that I'm not supposed to give away, Google has some AI inside them too.
Well, their search algorithms are proprietary. Nobody knows how they work, right? Yeah.
Somebody knows something about how they work.
They just made public their version of the same thing, right? Bard.
Yeah, yes. Bard is now coming.
Yeah. Oh.
So yes, no, I mean, it's I think this will be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah.
I think that's the fundamentals.
Thank you.
The bigger picture maybe is that this stuff is all moving very fast, and it's getting much more capable, maybe exponentially. And so the question is, what are the capabilities of these things going to be in 2 years or 5 years?
Right. Well, the other thing I think to pay attention to, which kind of addresses some of what Nikki was saying, is there's a curve that you may have seen about people when they first encounter some area. The initial curve is, I think I know a lot about this because I've read a couple of blog posts and watched a couple of YouTube videos, and now I think I know what this is about. And then the more you learn, the more you think, well, maybe I don't know everything. And the farther down the curve, the more you learn, the farther down the curve you go about your perception of how much you know about this topic. So you jump up very quickly to a high self-image, and then you go down as you learn more, and then eventually you start coming back up again, but you never get back to where you were at the top. And ChatGPT has the same curve. When you first start using ChatGPT, you will think, this is great. This is giving me really cool information. The more you use it, you'll go down the curve to, okay, well, there's mistakes. It doesn't give me the information that I need. But now I know how to use it a little bit better. I ask better questions of it. I know how to interact with it better. It's giving me better answers now. But you probably never get back to that initial impression of being really impressed by it. So that curve it's an interesting human curve for one thing, but it's also an interesting the fact that people's perception of ChatGPT is definitely runs along that curve.
Yeah, along those lines, one of the writers at my work ran some of our public-facing docs through and had a mini meltdown in our Slack. And then the more we looked at it, we're like, this isn't actually great. You're okay. But it was exactly that curve, like, whoa, okay.
Right.
So,
well, and I think we did a thing with using ChatGPT to ask write a sales letter for a company that needs to improve their documentation, and it actually wrote a relatively good quick email sales letter, saying not far off from what Paul might write to a customer. So I mean, it needed some editing.
Yeah. By the way, one of the questions, Jasmine, is how do you make your value visible in an organization? This is obviously something you need to do to prevent layoffs. Does anyone have anything to say on that subject?
There is an article on our website.
Okay.
Called Tangible Benefits of Excellent Technical Communication, or Technical Communication Excellence, I guess is how we run it. Anyway, it's the Tangible Benefits article. I'll go grab it and put the link in the chat. But the Tangible Benefits article runs a pretty interesting story about all the things that we think we do that improve the world. And then there's another one that's defending your documentation budget. So this is sort of for the doc manager, is how do you keep your budget? Andrew's already beat me to my website. So
and Jasmine.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, tangible benefits and how to defend your doc budget are two of the articles on our site. And I expect ChatGPT will read that at some point and be able to regurgitate to it if you need
it. Hopefully to a
that raises a question for me about
plagiarism.
Copyright. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that I think it's a very interesting proposition, and especially if you think in terms of the Google business model, which is drive people to your website so that you pay me money because of the advertising that gets me to your website. But if you're using ChatGPT to give you the answer before you have to go to the website, and you get what you wanted from your answer to your question from the ChatGPT answer, then I don't have to go to the source. You don't have to go to expert support site to find the tangible benefits of technical communication excellence. And what does that do to Google's business model?
That ChatGPT got it from your website.
Right. Yeah. Right. So yes, there are issues of plagiarism and copyright and business model, and there are a bunch of interesting things in here.
Well, the copyright laws are never going to keep up. I mean, right. they're the motivations of the people who write them are different anyway. But
well, the other interesting things about ChatGPT, another interesting thing about ChatGPT is there's a kid that just graduating from Princeton who wrote basically using ChatGPT, wrote an application that says, was this written by ChatGPT? You give it a collection, you give it a text and say, was it written by ChatGPT? And it does a pretty good job of saying yes or no.
Oh, good.
Oh.
So he's now fighting off venture capital guys trying to get money to commercialize this.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, no, there's some fun stuff going on in here.
Well, that brings us to my final question. I was just, again, selfishly, because I'm thinking about accessibility as well and those sorts of careers. Has anyone used a layoff or some moment like this to pivot your career in a different direction? And if so, what was that like?
Every time, really.
Did it just happen, or was it a deliberate move on your part?
Well, I think whenever I find myself with some free time, I try to learn something new. So I guess that, and sometimes when I learn something new, it opens up yet another possible line of attack on customers and finding people who want my services.
So I would chime in and say there are a lot of people who say I've always wanted to try something related to technical writing, but maybe not as technical. Very frequently, it's the question of can I find something that's as enjoyable and as lucrative, that's less technical and less geeky, and there is that kind of work out there, and I would say there is that kind of work that is less prone to laying you off. There are industries that, in my humble opinion, have forgotten or never learned how to lay off their workforce.
Yeah.
Who are they, please?
Yeah.
Well, healthcare and biotech to some extent, so life sciences work, but legal, I mean, not that it pays as well, but they typically don't trim their workforces as aggressively as the tech industry does. Government doesn't lay off, period. If you work for a PG&E, you may get a volatile ride, but if you work for Caltrain, you might not. Again, you're not going to earn what the software industry tech writers earn, but you're going to have stability. And I roll my eyes at the number of people who spend 25 years in tech at the same company, and I say, you can't be a tech writer. They say, no, I'm a lawyer, or I'm in accounting, and they get left alone. So there are ways to stay in tech and not be as low on the totem pole as most tech writers are. And there are other ways to be a technical writer in different industries where you are more valued, and you're typically valued for your interpersonal skills more than you are in tech writing for the software industry. So if you have good interpersonal skills, there are markets that are much more receptive than software.
Absolutely.
Such as, again, what you mentioned?
Well, sure. I mean, where you're gathering information, from a variety of different disciplines. You're not necessarily writing to a very sophisticated audience. You're writing to an impatient audience. And your job is to be accurate and clear and on time, rather than capable of understanding what the engineers barely understand. And I think the software industry has pushed tech writers far beyond their comfort zone, so that the number of truly marketable software tech writers is shrinking year by year rather than growing.
Right. I think that's especially in the software industry. And there's, to sort of follow up on what Andrew was saying, domain knowledge of a particular environment is sometimes a big advantage. So if you know healthcare, if you know what goes on in a hospital, if you know what HIPAA is all about, then you might be attracted to a technical writing thing in in that arena. We broke our pick a while back trying to get into biotech when we didn't have biotech domain knowledge in the company. We had one person, and she was trying to get us involved there, and we just found out that no, it was too deep. You really had to know something about biotech to even be able to get in the door and be and be productive quickly enough. So domain knowledge in some particular area is certainly a plus. Now with software, it's often you have two problems. One is understanding what the software guys are doing, and then understanding their domain, whatever they're doing. So, fintech, is one of those things. Is you might know something about financial, but you don't know about what this fintech company is doing to disrupt that financial, environment. So you have to both know both the financial parts and the software parts. So in a lot of ways, and Andrew's right about it being a difficult proposition to be a technical writer in the software arena in a particular niche domain that also has its own vocabulary and its own ecosystem. So
I have
so out of tech, Andrew's saying, look at things out of tech. I think that makes sense. And then to counter that a little bit, one of the things that we're seeing is every company is a software company. If you go look at what's happening at Caterpillar, they make big machines and all that, right? Well, on all those big machines, there's software now. And some of what those kinds of companies are looking for now is, we know how to write documentation for the users. We don't know how to write the documentation for how to use our software. So
I have a question for Jasmine. Maybe I thought I heard you say at the beginning of your question, you're interested in accessibility, or at least exploring that.
Yeah, I mean, before watching a lot of the accessibility teams getting laid off recently, that was something I was considering this year, is pivoting more into those dedicated roles at an organization.
One of the things that helped me in a very difficult transition was have you ever heard of information interviews, where you find someone who's doing something? Yeah, that helped me an awful lot. That helped me get through an 8-month period of unemployment. So, yeah, and I just dozens of people. And while there wasn't any one person who was the magic bullet, when you put them all together, and I was just like a 15-minute interview on what's it like doing accessibility, and that I wasn't researching that particular topic, but it really did help if you're thinking of striking out in a new direction, is find someone. And connecting in STC is often a good way to find somebody. Do you know somebody who knows somebody about accessibility who can give me 15 minutes of their time for an information interview? So
great, thank you.
I'd like to underline something Andrew said, which is, I've been doing a contract to PG&E and their vegetation management, doing standards and procedures there. It's always been weird to me that there's different industries think that procedural documentation is so foreign to unique to their industry. But, so anyways, my point I'm trying to get to is that what I've learned from corporate America is their standards are very low. If you can produce good documentation that's easy to read and use and actually works, they'll love you for it. And also, if you can get a group of SMEs in a meeting and keep the meeting focused like you're doing here, you know, I've been working with up to 15, 18 SMEs in a room trying to get documentation done on something I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you know, but they all do. But I can keep them focused. And one guy complimented me on, you know, the meeting got off, they started talking about other stuff, and I went, okay, let's, you know, get back on track here. I said it very politely and everything. And it was just like, it was like this big deal to him. He was just going, enough for him to call it out and say, wow, good job. And I'm just going, that's like a fundamental aspect of leading a meeting, isn't it? You know, but to them, it was a very big deal. And so if you can do stuff like that and control your sphere of responsibility in a way that they don't have to babysit you or do anything, they're totally impressed by that.
Yep. One of the tricks that we try to do with our people is write good status reports. If you write good status reports, that they will often, you know, impress the client, you know, just because the client knows what the hell you're doing. And so that it's just one of the simple little tricks. But yeah, if you can, technical communication excellence is the fundamentals of technical communication excellence. If you can communicate, you can win.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. I keep a Word document with all of the documents I'm working on, the SMEs and next steps and stuff like that. And I have that information readily available anytime anybody needs it. They think that's just the most amazing thing ever. It's just, and I'm just going, but you've got all these things, you're spinning all these plates. You have to have some sort of way to keep track of that. And it's surprising how many people do not do that.
Yeah, right. One of the other, you know, simple little tricks is maintain a glossary.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That's
maintain a glossary. You know,
That's
especially when you're walking into a new domain where you don't know what they're talking about. Maintain the glossary, and often we point out where they're overusing a term to mean more than one thing, multiple terms for the same thing. And just maintaining the glossary is often a big win. And even the engineering group will start to communicate a little more precisely if they realize that they're violating those principles.
I found an interesting thing to do with the place before last that I was at, robotics company in Emeryville that suddenly went out of business, and that was I interviewed people for a company history. You know, the first day I was, or first week I was there, I interviewed the two founders, and then over time I interviewed a bunch of other people who had been there a long time and so forth. And I published these interviews on a website. I transcribed them and all, and so forth. And anyway, it just grew into a lot of stuff like that. And I think it was very helpful, and I think it helped to foster a culture of communication there, which definitely was important. And I think I tend to thrive better in places where they have a culture of communication than where they don't.
Just real quick too, if you do get laid off and you land in a startup, a glossary is just an incredibly imperative thing. Also, write up for yourself product description, because what you'll find is nobody in the company agrees with what the product does.
Ooh.
So it's really good, and besides being clear on that yourself, you become the resource for people in the company about what's what.
Yeah. glossaries are very important. I remember once worked for a company that had been in business for 30 years. And, the engineers wrote all the docs, those usual horror stories. And it turns out that they had the same word mean two different things. Okay. If you can get in, if someone had gotten in there at startup, it would have been a real benefit to the company, to just use one word for one concept, Oh. Yeah, I really, and that's the beginnings of a style guide too. When you say, yeah, like should Zoom be capitals, initial caps, or in all caps?
Right.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I found when I was at Symbio that one of the things that it helped me a lot was to actually help hone the company's message as to what it was they did. Even though I don't really care that much for marketing. I spent 10 years in marketing a long time ago, and I'm happy enough to be out of it more or less for good. But that I found was useful, and it helped me in writing documentation and other stuff to have worked on and iterated with the founders and other people on what the company's message was.
Hey.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that takes us to about time.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. This was wonderfully helpful and a lot to chew on. So I really appreciate all of your insights and contributions.
Well, if nobody else has anything really noteworthy to say, I'll stop the recording and then we can just chat if we want to.
Okay. Sounds good.